Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen right there, and she joins us now. Secretary Yellen, thanks for joining us this morning. You just said that the relief package is the most important thing we could do to get on a sustainable path. This is a massive package. Are you confident it can be administered effectively? And as big as it is it enough to do the job of recovering those 9.5 million jobs lost during the pandemic?
Well, I think it's the right size to address the very significant problem that we have. You said we've lost 9.5 million jobs. If we were properly measuring unemployment, it would register over 9%. We need both relief for the people who are suffering because of what's happened with the economy. We need to defeat the pandemic. This package really does that. It provides substantial aid. There'll be $1,400 checks going out to the members of 85% of American households, $3,000 payments to children, $3,600 for children under 6, unemployment compensation that will extend through Labor Day, money to address the eviction crisis, to address people who are behind on their mortgage payments. We have 22 million Americans who say they don't have enough to eat. There's additional money for food stamps. State and local governments have already laid off 1.4 million workers, and they're going to get the money that they need to keep those essential workers on the payrolls. And we need to open schools quickly and safely, and this package has the money to do that. So I believe there's enough support in this package to relieve suffering and to get the economy quickly back on track. I'm hopeful that if we defeat the pandemic, that we can have the economy back near full employment next year. And I think this is the package we need to do that.
So, first of all, you can argue about the necessity of this thing. A lot of people are saying that the COVID relief bill isn't really necessary, given how the markets will reopen, jobs will be created, and the actual natural growth of the market will propel this thing forward without the need of throwing actual $2 trillion on the economy, creating more inflation. Now, I'm not going to say I completely agree with that, because if you don't have anything to eat, if you can't make ends meet, you need this $1,400 check. A lot of people who are saying that are rich motherfuckers who don't understand what being poor looks like. And trust me, I've been there, I know. Now, here's the thing. I completely agree with everything she said so far. This COVID relief bill will definitely help people. However, nothing comes free. We have to understand that things come with a price. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea, but in this video, I want to highlight what is the price we're going to pay for this COVID relief bill, because it's not going to be given for free. And I want you to be aware of the prices. I'm not advocating against the bill. I'm just going to highlight some stuff that Janet doesn't want you to know. Let's keep watching.
How about inflation, though? Your predecessor, Larry Summers, has warned of the dangers. Economist Mark Zandi says investors are underestimating the dangers. If we get back to full employment,
Here we go.
We see inflation surge. How big a problem is that?
Before she answers, I'm going to paraphrase the question just so we are on the same page. Essentially, what Mr. Stephanopoulos is saying here is the same thing I was arguing. When you keep throwing money on the market, essentially holding a money gun, just throwing more and more money on the market, and she just spelled it out. Beyond the $1,400 checks, there's a lot of money going into infrastructure, employment support, child support. A lot of money is going into the market. When you're throwing a lot of cash on the market, you're increasing inflation because people have more spending power, and with zero interest rates, nobody's going to be saving that, meaning that more people will be buying the same amount of commodities. And with the shortages we're already seeing in raw materials, automakers have reported massive raw material shortages. Inflation seems to be knocking on our doorstep, and throwing more money on the system is only going to make things worse. I really want to see what she answers here, because probably the best answer for me would be, if I was, in her position, is to say, yes, it's going to make inflation worse, but it's worth it. The price is going to be hefty, but it must be paid because we believe that this is the best thing to do as far as helping those the most need. Now, I don't know what she's going to say here, but if she says that there's not going to be inflation because of this, I'm going to be really pissed.
Well, policymaking is about identifying and addressing risks. And
True.
the most significant risk we face is a workforce that's scarred by a long period of unemployment. People being out of work, not able to find jobs, can have a permanent effect on their well-being. I think that's the most significant risk. Is there a risk of inflation? I think there's a small risk, and
Oh, come on, Janet. Oh, she started off so well. Oh, that was annoying. Because in the first half of the answer, we're going to let her finish in a second. I know you guys hate when I interrupt these guys, but you have to understand I'm really passionate about this. The first answer, the first half of the answer was brilliant. She's essentially saying, well, I have to choose between two evils, right? And policymaking is about making the tough choice, and our preference, our choice is to help the workforce, the poor people, the people who need it the most to get out of the slump. And that was a good answer. All she needed to say at this point, well, we know it's going to increase inflation, but we got to do this because we got to help those people. But now she wants to eat the cake and have it too. Now she's about to tell us that there's not going to be any inflation or it's just a small risk of inflation, which is a complete total nonsense BS. Let's hear what she has to say.
I think it's manageable. Prices fell a lot last spring.
What?
The pandemic surged. I expect some of those prices to move up again as the economy recovers this spring and summer. But that's a temporary movement in prices. To get
Lord, give me strength.
sustained high inflation like we had in the 1970s.
What are you talking about? Oh, and you just mentioned the 70s. We got to talk about this. Now, being the geek and the nerd that I am, I got to call you out here because this is insane to me. Here's what you're saying here. Prices have declined because of the pandemic. Why don't you go look at what the automakers are saying about raw materials, about semiconductors, about graphics cards, about pretty much every single raw material you can think of is in actual deficit. You can't get none of it. This shit is scarce. It's getting expensive. Deficits is actually the premonition of inflation. Saying prices have gone down. Which prices? Everything is more expensive now. What the hell are you talking about? And if you're already going to mention the 70s, let me just tell you that that's not a good idea for you because people who live in glass buildings should be throwing stones. Because 1970s is pretty much exactly what we have right now. If you're going to say that we're not in the 1970s scenario, I'm going to be really pissed again. 1970s was a period of stagflation. What happens in the stagflation when you have high inflation, high unemployment? Shit are way more expensive. However, we have much less buying power since we're out of work. That is a very nasty situation that breeds a crisis, a depression, a recession, whatever you want to call it. It's not a healthy situation. And I'm sure Janet is going to talk about it. And now I just can't wait to hear what she has to say.
I absolutely don't expect that. We've had very well anchored inflation expectations and a Federal Reserve that's learned about how to manage inflation. So I don't think it's a significant risk. And if it materializes, we'll certainly monitor for it. But we have tools to address it.
This lady is going to sit here with a straight face say, there is no risk of inflation even if we keep throwing money at the market because, what's her reasoning? Because we can manage it? What kind of a screwed up logic is this shit? Oh my goodness. At least be honest. Say, hey, we're doing this tough choice because we want to help you motherfuckers. We'll take the inflation if it helps you make ends meet. Why are you trying to make it seem like it is the perfect choice? It isn't.
Back in 2017, he testified that long-term budget projections should keep people awake at night. The situation is worse now. Federal debt expected to exceed GDP for the first time since World War II. So are you getting any sleep?
I like George.
I am getting sleep. My views have changed somewhat about fiscal.
My views have changed since I got this new job where I need my views to be changed. I'm getting paid, so I'm getting some sleep.
Sustainability. In part because what we've seen all around the world is a trend toward very low interest rates. Interest rates in the United States are much lower than they were in past decades, and you see that in all developed countries around the world. And it reflects structural trends that are not going to disappear soon. And when I think about the burden of debt, I think about it mainly in terms of the interest payments that the government needs to pay on that debt. And in spite of the fact that the debt has increased substantially, interest payments relative to the size of the economy have remained quite low, no higher than they were back in 2007. But
Spoken like a true American, a person who enjoys living in debt as long as the interest payments are low, who gives a shit about the debt? Is this how you're running your policy? Oh my goodness.
of course, we have to make sure that that the budget is on a sustainable path. And this is something that we can afford. In the longer run, we need to get deficits under control to
And,
make sure that our fiscal situation is sustainable.
and that means raising revenue to pay for future programs. What do you think of Senator Warren's call for a wealth tax?
Oh, it's about to get heated because this is one of the most annoying things I'm about to hear. I know what she's going to say because I've heard her speak about this before. I'm about to blow a gasket.
Well, President Biden has put forward a number of proposals. He hasn't proposed a wealth tax, but he has proposed that corporations and wealthy
Don't
individuals
say it.
should pay more in order to meet the needs of the economy, the spending we need to do.
You morons. You think that by increasing tax rates on corporations, you're going to close the deficit? That's kind of thinking you would expect from somebody in the 1950s. Increasing tax rates on corporations does not increase collections. In fact, you're going to decrease the amount of dollars you collect if you increase your tax revenue. You're literally going to decrease your collections from corporate tax if you're going to increase the rates. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but there's this law of diminishing returns that actually becomes negative with tax rates. And Janet Yellen, with her obsolete concepts, this godforsaken concepts she brought from the 50s, I don't know from when, are damaging to the US economy because what she's talking about here is essentially actually getting companies to pay less taxes to the United States. That's how ridiculous that is. What happens when you raise corporate taxes for US companies, those companies are now more incentivized, have more resources to put into tax planning themselves out of the US and into a much more comfortable jurisdiction like Ireland, for example, or Switzerland, or Cyprus. There's a lot of different examples. I'm not going to go through a lot of them. Malta. I mean, there's a lot of them. If you incentivize them to leave by hiking up taxes, you're going to end up hurting the economy. You have to see this. Raising taxes does not raise collections.
And over time, I expect that we will be putting forth proposals to get deficits under control.
But you're not going to get deficit under control if you raise taxes. If anything, the way down, that's where you should be going. And I don't have any skin in the game. I don't have a US corporation. Couldn't care less. I'm just giving you advice. If you lower taxes, you're going to encourage more companies to come from overseas, bring back jobs to the US, pay more taxes, pay more employment taxes. I mean, that's just such a simple concept to understand. Why can't you understand it? But I mean, this is coming from a lady who's contemplating seriously taxing unrealized stock market gains. If your share price goes up by 100, boom, here's your tax bill. Even though you never sold the stock, you might not even have a penny in the bank.
But no wealth tax?
Well, that's something that we haven't decided yet and can look at. But President Biden during the campaign proposed a higher tax rate on corporations, on individuals, and on capital gains and dividend payments that are received. And those are alternatives that address that are similar in their impact to a wealth tax.
Secretary Yellen, thanks very much for your time.
Secretary Yellen, if you're going to tax the wealthy higher, I know that sounds populistic. It sounds a lot like Robin Hood, right? People will love you for the concept, but you're throwing fucking sand at people's eyes if you're saying that. Because you're smart enough to know that imposing higher wealth taxes are only going to drive these wealthy away. They can literally plan themselves out of this. Look at what Amazon have been doing for years before the new incentives of the new tax plan actually got them to go back to the US. I mean, that's just a very populistic thing that people would love to hear, but it literally will have zero effect on the actual results you want to get here. And I think that's unfortunate that nobody's calling them out on this. I think that's the way it is, but hey, what I liked about what she said is the fact that they're making the choice to help the people who need it the most. The stimulus checks, all the support from the stimulus bill is going for the people who need it the most. I love that. I think that's the right choice, even given the fact that it's going to increase inflation. However, I don't like the fact that she tried to pretend like inflation is not going to suffer because of this, because it will. And I definitely don't appreciate her talking about the US debt as something she just doesn't concern herself about because the interest rates are so low. And I also don't agree with what she said about raising taxes. Corporate taxes, capital gain taxes. If you raise that, if you try to tax the rich higher, they're just going to move out and relocate to some more favorable location as far as their tax residence. It's not complicated. They've been doing this for years. You're not going to get what you want here. In fact, you're going to hurt the US economy and the US tax collections. But hey, this is just my opinion. I'm just some dude on YouTube. Do your own research, allegedly, blah, blah, mother effing blah. See you guys in the next video.